Two small-time arms dealers are trapped in the deadliest combat zone on Earth, desperately smuggling a truck full of illegal handguns from Jordan to Baghdad. While stranded at a remote Fallujah gas station, they are spotted by heavily armed terrorists who immediately hunt them down. They have no military backup, and one wrong turn means instant death. But the craziest part isn't that they are driving through the triangle of death, it's that just a few months ago, one of them was a broke massage therapist in Miami. Back in 2005, David was a 22-year-old guy living in Miami, working for a massage company on the side. But David had started getting bored of making money by touching rich old people. He had dropped out of college after just one semester, which led to a fight with his parents. Even before this, David had been fired from 6 different jobs, and there were a few others he had quit on his own. He didn't have many options left. Desperate, David used his entire life savings to buy bed sheets, intending to sell them to old age homes. Things didn't work out there either, because the owners of the old age homes actually had no interest in making the elderly comfortable. One evening, during a funeral, David met his best school friend, Ephraim. He hadn't spoken to Ephraim in years. Ephraim used to live in LA with his uncle and worked in the weapons business, but his uncle had cheated him out of some money. Because of this, Ephraim left his uncle's house, moved to Miami, and started his own business called AYY. While driving around together to buy some green stuff, they stopped outside a dealer's house. Ephraim got fooled by some goons roaming around, and they snatched his money. To teach the goons a lesson, Ephraim casually took out a machine gun from the trunk of his car and started firing rapidly into the sky. The goons got scared and ran away. This incident had a deep impact on David. He was tired of constantly hearing insults from people, and he liked people who had the guts to stand up for themselves. The next day, David went to Ephraim's office. Seeing him work made the respect in David's eyes grow even more. Ephraim was pretending to be an army officer on the phone to find out which contracts his competitors were going after. He didn't just sell guns on the internet, he sold them to the US government. Ephraim told David that the real money was in selling to the government, and since David was his friend, he started showing him how it all worked. On the government's website, Ephraim explained that he doesn't go after the huge deals that only go to big companies. He targets the small fish, and even the small deals here are worth crores, holding huge profits. After having lunch with Ephraim, David returned home and found out that his wife Liz was pregnant. The moment he heard the news, he panicked, thinking about how he would manage the expenses for the coming baby. Later, when David met Ephraim again, Ephraim directly told him that from now on, he would work with him. At first, David thought it would be better to stay away from the business because he didn't want someone to lose their life because of him. But Ephraim trapped him with his sweet talk, convincing him that their work wasn't promoting war, and David ended up agreeing. David went home and lied to Liz, telling her they were going to sell bedsheets to the army. Liz was completely happy with David's new work. For the next 6 weeks, David learned everything about the weapons business. He found good deals on the government website that others had ignored and began talking to weapon manufacturers in Eastern Europe. People like them are called war dogs, people who make money through wars without ever stepping onto a battlefield themselves. Ephraim also had a secret partner named Ralph Slutsky, a local businessman who owned 14 dry cleaning shops in Miami. Ralph provided money for the weapons and owned 25% of the company in return. But that 25% wasn't actually much, because David and Ephraim were making far more money than they showed him. Ralph was also a strict Jewish man who believed Ephraim would never sell guns to Israel's enemies. But Ephraim didn't care who was on which side. He sold to anyone who wanted guns. The more time David spent in the business, the better he became. He even made contact with a massive supplier named Henry, who was considered the best weapons supplier for the last 20 years. Then one night, after drinking a little too much at a bar, Ephraim flirted with the wrong girl, and her boyfriend landed a solid punch on him. Later, while sitting at a restaurant to eat, they got a phone call saying they had won the Beretta pistol contract. They now had to supply thousands of Beretta pistols to the Iraqi-American army in Baghdad. A few days later, David and Liz went to the doctor and found out through an ultrasound that they were having a baby girl. But David's happy moment was suddenly interrupted by a call from Captain Philip Santos, who was extremely worried. A new law had banned all weapon supplies going from Italy to Iraq, making it almost impossible for the pistols to reach their destination. David didn't properly know about this law, but since the deal was extremely important, he lied to Santos, telling him everything was under control. Luckily, Ephraim found a solution. They would send the pistols from Italy to Jordan first, since Jordan was a country with no active conflict, and then move them to Iraq. That same night, David and Liz hosted a dinner party. Some of Liz's friends warned David about Ephraim, revealing that Ephraim's uncle hadn't stolen money from him. Ephraim had stolen from his uncle. Suddenly, Ephraim showed up uninvited and felt really bad when he saw the party. David took him aside, explaining it was Liz's party and he hadn't invited anyone. That's when Ephraim dropped a bomb. Jordan's customs department had seized their guns. Captain Santos had found out, demanding answers about the situation, and threatened to blackmail blacklist them forever if the delivery wasn't completed. Overhearing this conversation, Liz panicked. Discovering her husband was a weapons dealer, she angrily told David she no longer trusted him because he lied. Unfortunately, David didn't have time to explain anything further because he and Ephraim had to leave immediately for Jordan. Upon arriving, they received no help from the embassy because the plane carrying the weapons had technically expired under government rules. After bribing the locals and getting the cargo released, they made a deal with Marlboro, the best smuggler in the country, to drive them to Iraq so they could personally deliver the guns. David was worried about the journey's safety, but Ephraim explained the job would be over quickly and they would arrive by morning. In the middle of the night, they reached the Iraqi border, where some soldiers stopped them, but Marlboro easily bribed them with cigarettes, claiming he was just a small delivery driver with important cargo. The truck moved ahead, and David and Ephraim peacefully fell asleep. When they woke up, the truck was stopped at a deserted gas station. While Marlboro filled the diesel, Ephraim went for a bathroom break. David got a call from Liz. She told him she finally understood how worried he was about their family and why he took this risky job. She said he shouldn't worry so much about money and begged him never to lie again. David agreed, but instantly told another lie, saying he was staying in a hotel. He suddenly had to cut the call as a group of armed rebels came toward them. David shouted for Ephraim to get inside. He started the truck in a hurry, but without enough diesel, they couldn't go far. They told Marlboro to run and jump in, and somehow he climbed in and refilled the gas. The rebels started firing bullets, and for a moment, all three thought they wouldn't survive. Luckily, the American army suddenly arrived and saved them. They reached the military base, and Captain Santos was extremely happy to see them alive after surviving a journey through Death Triangle itself. After taking selfies with the cargo, they received their payment, and soldiers escorted them safely to the airport. This deal made them a huge amount of money and made their company famous. They bought 2 expensive identical cars and 2 luxurious homes in the same building. Together, they burned the bedsheets David had once bought. It was their way of saying goodbye to their old lives. Ralph was so happy with the increased profits that he invested even more money, allowing them to expand and hire people to search for new deals. David got to spend more time with his little daughter, but the success they were getting day by day started affecting Ephraim's body and mind badly. Then one night, David found out that the army had posted a new deal, which later became famous as the Afghan deal. It was an unbelievably huge order containing insane numbers, like 100 million AK-47 bullets, 2 million guns, and much more. This deal could become a massive opportunity for them. That's why they decided to go to Nevada, where a kind of weapons expo takes place. People come there to showcase weapons made with new techniques and ideas, but unfortunately, their plan failed. After doing the calculations, they realized that no matter how big a deal they managed to get, they still wouldn't be able to handle such a massive quantity because their company was simply too small. Later, while David was trying to forget his disappointment by playing cards in a casino, Henry Girard, whom people considered the king of the weapons business, approached him. David immediately went to bring Ephraim, and together, both of them met Henry at a restaurant for dinner so they could discuss this incredible deal. Henry said that he could complete this order because he had some special connections in Albania, a country that had spent years preparing to attack Western nations, but never actually managed to do it. Because of that, they now had millions of weapons that had never even been used. Now they wanted to get rid of those weapons by selling them. Henry said that he could get those weapons for a cheap price because otherwise they would simply end up as scrap. Completing this deal would be like a dream come true for them. That's why Ephraim started wondering why Henry himself wasn't stepping forward for the deal. Henry then explained that the US government had placed many sanctions on him. The government believed that he was connected to terrorists. This scared David a little because he didn't want to work with a person like that, but Ephraim, who could only see money, started convincing David that sometimes people are wrongly suspected too, and it wasn't necessary that Henry was actually connected to terrorists. Influenced by his words, David finally agreed to the deal as well. A few days later, both of them flew to Albania so they could properly inspect the weapons. There they were assigned a driver named Bashkim. When they reached the warehouse, they began testing the quality of the bullets. Even though the bullets were incredibly old, they still performed effectively. Because of this, both of them flew back to Miami and placed a bid on the website to purchase the bullets. It took 5 months for a response to come, but luckily they got the deal. However, before starting such a huge operation, the government carefully investigates the company. So David and Ephraim began preparing preparing all the company paperwork and financial records, things they had actually never properly maintained before. They had everything falsely prepared. 2 weeks later, they went to Rock Island so they could meet the US military officers who supervised all army purchases. But both of them were so nervous that before even entering the building, they smoked weed to calm themselves down. Thankfully, the meeting went very well. Even the fake documents they had prepared were approved. Still, Ephraim became angry because he found out that they had been selected for the deal only because they had quoted a much lower price than everyone else. That meant they could have easily asked for $50 million more. When David returned home and told Liz that he was going to Albania for a month, Liz reacted much better than he had expected because she herself was planning to stay at her mother's house with their daughter. David asked her why she was going there. In response, Liz showed him the pictures from Iraq. She was extremely angry because David had lied to her. While trying to calm her down, David kept swearing that this was the last time and that he would never lie again. But then, Liz told him that she had found out something else too. She had discovered bundles of money hidden under the sink without her knowledge. Now things had completely crossed the line for Liz. According to her, David had gone too far with his lies, so she left the house with their daughter. Before leaving for Albania, Ephraim thanked David for sacrificing so much for the company and, in return, gifted him a golden grenade. At that moment, David showed him a partnership agreement, which David himself had written, so that both of them could sign it, and everything would legally remain in both of their hands. After signing it, David placed the agreement inside the table drawer. However, Ephraim did not seem very happy about it. When they reached Albania, David once again met Bashkim, who was working as their driver. David kept trying to call Liz again and again, but she wasn't answering his calls. While preparations were being made to load the cargo into trucks, David suddenly discovered that they had been cheated. All those bullets were actually Chinese-made, and the US government had strictly banned those bullets. After informing Ephraim about the issue, both of them immediately called Henry. But Henry coldly replied that now it was their headache. He said they should have checked all the bullets properly before buying them. Now David was badly trapped in Albania. He started trying to find different dealers across Eastern Europe. A few days later, Ephraim arrived at their hotel and said that he had an idea. He suggested that they should repackage the bullets into different boxes so the US government would never find out which country the bullets actually came from. He also said that by using cardboard boxes, they could save a lot of money on weight. It would definitely be illegal, but there was so much money involved in the deal that they simply couldn't let it go. After this, Bashkim introduced them to one of his friends named Enver, who owned a packaging company. They didn't tell Enver about the Chinese bullet problem. They only told him that they wanted to reduce the weight of their cargo. Enver demanded $100,000 for the work, which was a very small amount compared to the money they would save and earn by rescuing the deal. Then, on December 8th, 2007, they successfully delivered the first $5 million worth of bullets to the army in Afghanistan without any issues. A few days later, on Christmas Day, Liz allowed David to see his daughter over a video call. But this turned out to be the last good thing happening in his life because a massive twist was about to come. That same night, Ephraim called the US officials and informed them that Henry had resold the bullets at 4 times the original price. And now, he wanted Henry removed from the deal because Henry had intended to cheat them. David immediately tried to stop him because he knew Henry was not someone they should mess with. David thought that they were already making a huge amount of money anyway, so Ephraim was unnecessarily putting the entire operation at risk. David said that he was staying far away from his family in Albania, working hard day and night, while Ephraim was relaxing comfortably in the USA. Sometimes, David even felt that they weren't really partners at all. Ephraim was the boss, and he was just a servant. Hearing this, Ephraim told him that he understood his feelings and promised not to do anything reckless. But at that very moment, Ephraim secretly stole the signed partnership agreement from David's table, and he also broke the promise he had just made. Because a few days later, as the new year 2008 began, David was kidnapped from his room and taken to an isolated place where 2 goons brutally beat him up. Then Henry appeared, pointed a gun at him, and threatened him by saying that both of them were trying to cut him out of his own deal. Terrified after this incident, David decided that he would return to Miami, so he went to the warehouse to collect his belongings. There, Enver told him that he still hadn't received his payment, and he had also figured out the real reason why they wanted the bullets repackaged. Enver was extremely angry because Ephraim wasn't answering any of his calls. But David promised him that once he reached the US, he would immediately send the money and return within a week to finish the remaining work. However, just as David was about to sit in a taxi, Bashkim's wife stopped him and told him that her husband had disappeared. Nobody had heard anything about Bashkim, and his body had never been found. After seeing all this, David decided that he just wanted to get out of there once and for all and never come back again. The moment he reached Miami, he first met Liz and confessed every illegal thing he had done for the company. When David told her that he would quit the weapons weapons business and go back to being a massage therapist again, Liz accepted him back. After this, David went to meet Ephraim to tell him that he had decided to leave the business. Ephraim felt as if David was betraying him, and he refused to give him any money. David then threatened him, saying that if he didn't receive his share within 2 weeks, he would send a lawyer after him. But Ephraim didn't care at all, because he had already burned the only signed copy of the partnership agreement. But when David found out about this, he threw the golden grenade gifted by Ephraim at the glass wall between their offices, creating a huge scene, and then walked away. 3 months later, David had returned to his old life as a massage therapist once again. One afternoon, Ralph came to meet him and said that Ephraim deeply regretted everything that had happened and wanted to meet him to make peace. After this, all three of them met at a restaurant. There, Ephraim apologized and said that he would give David $200,000. Hearing this felt almost like a joke to David. He felt insulted and became extremely angry. He then started telling Ralph about all the illegal activities they had done, using Ralph's money, and how they had been giving him far less money than what they were actually earning. David told him that he had all the proof stored in his laptop. That's why David said that if he wanted to, he could easily destroy Ephraim and leave him on the streets. But Ephraim still didn't seem too worried, because if his name came out publicly, then David's name would also come out, since all the company documents had David's name on them too. And so, the meeting ended without any agreement. A little while later, David got a call from the New York Times. They wanted to interview him about the Chinese bullets that had been repackaged. But David said that he knew nothing about it and immediately hung up the phone. Now David started getting nervous because this meant that the information had already leaked out, and now he too would end up in trouble. After promising Liz that he would call a lawyer, David ran into Ephraim inside an elevator because Ephraim had also received a call. Now Ephraim once again started behaving like the same old school friend. He tried to emotionally manipulate David, but David no longer trusted him and punched him hard because he had finally realized that they were never truly friends. For Ephraim, David had always just been a way to make money. Then, the moment the elevator reached downstairs, both of them were surrounded by FBI officers and immediately arrested. Despite all the illegal activities and lies they had told the government, the mistake that finally got them caught was not paying Enver. Because he never received his payment, Enver called the American Defense Authorities and filed a complaint against them. That was the moment when the FBI fully began investigating the case. During the investigation, Ralph was also arrested at one of his stores. He became so terrified that without any hesitation, he made a deal with the FBI. The restaurant meeting had actually been his plan all along, and he had been wearing a microphone to secretly record the entire conversation. In that recording, all of their crimes were basically confessed. More than 70 criminal charges were filed against Ephraim. From the recording, it became clear that Ephraim was the real mastermind behind everything. Because of this, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Meanwhile, David confessed to all of his crimes. That's why he was only placed under house arrest for 7 months. They were also informed that their company would not be allowed to receive any government contracts until 2022. After spending 7 months locked inside, David returned to working once again as a massage therapist. He was shocked when his next client turned out to be Henry. David was a little scared, but Henry assured him that he wasn't going to hurt him, because if he had truly wanted to kill him, he would have done it long ago. Henry apologized for everything that had happened in Albania, saying that he had been given wrong information. He also thanked David for not mentioning his name during the FBI interrogation. David also had some questions for Henry. He asked whether their meeting at the casino table had really just been a coincidence and what had happened to Bashkim. But instead of answering, Henry offered him a suitcase full of money on just one condition. David would never ask any more questions. If you liked the video, then hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.